My PVE build isn't perfect. While it's insanely optimized for damage and mobility, it can almost certainly be improved. I've seen a lot of my viewers looking to make their own PVE builds, so that's why I'm going to be covering every talent, attunement, oath, mantra, and more that you should use on your PVE builds. This video is going to be packed with tons of useful information and is essential to watch if you're interested in PvE at all. Also quickly, I'm hosting a contest on my Discord where you guys send me a clip of you using your PvE builds and I will end up showcasing them in a future video. So join the Discord if you want to submit something. Also, there's obviously going to be prizes for the coolest PvE builds shown. Anyways, before you start making your PvE build, you need to choose between a layer 2 build and a hell mode build. You see, these two are very different. For instance, while both builds have insanely high damage potential, layer 2 builds will very often have a lot more mobility. This mobility is found in stuff like ice skates, metal ball, gale lunge, and stuff like that. So you're making layer 2 builds that have high damage and high mobility, whereas hell mode builds will very often have high damage and high survivability. Simply because of the amount of RNG and mob spawns in hell mode, you want to have that survivability so you don't wipe. Whereas in layer 2, you can get away with being a little more fragile since you have a light hook. I wouldn't recommend making a build that has both high survivability and high mobility. As the saying goes, a jack of all trades is a master of none. So that's why I'd recommend making a specialized build for either type of PvE event. Besides, an optimized layer 2 build can do hell modes with a group of people, but you'll need to be more confident in fighting squibbos since you're less fragile. While a hell mode build can do layer 2s consistently, but they won't be nearly as fast. Obviously you're thinking, hell modes and layer 2s aren't everything. There's stuff like dukes, ferrymans, kiters, and other stuff. While an optimized build for layer 2 and hell mode can do all of the other PvE content in the game, with either high survivability or high speed in doing it. The one exception is ferryman farming builds that just specialize on hitting him a ton. I won't really be covering them much in this video. Anyways, let's start by discussing all the talents and mantras you'll need. Buildmaker has a collection of most of the damage buff talents and mantras, although it does have a few errors or missing items. These include Metal Armament, which gives you 30% extra M1 damage per proc, Lightning Cloak that increases your attack speed by about 30% according to my testing, Ardor Scream, which causes foes debuffed by it to take 25% more damage, bypassing the damage cap. This also applies to Taunt, although you're dealing an extra 10% damage. Raging Static, much like Flame Within, gives a 20% damage buff. The Strength food buff that you can get from stuff like Murburgers gives you 10% more damage to my knowledge. Eating Gold also gives you 5% damage if you have Iron Sing. Spinecutter on proc will give you a second M1 that does 50% of the damage of your normal M1. Speed Demon adds an extra 30% damage to your weapon as bleed. An Ishan's Ring gives you 10% more damage, but you take 15% more damage, and a Ring of Casters gives 10% more damage to Mantra. However, you lose 10% of your M1 damage. Okay, that's a lot of numbers and talents, but all you need to know is that you want to pick some combination of these to get you to a damage cap of 175%. You can't go any higher unless you use stuff like Ardor Scream, Grim, or Taunt to bypass it. However, there is a secondary way to get even more damage. By using stuff like Lightning Cloak, Metal Armament, Spinecutter, and the previously mentioned ways to make your target take more damage, you can actually technically go beyond the 175% damage. That's why you'll see most layer 2 focus builds either taking Lightning Cloak or Metal Armament. So you'll want to make sure to budget into your build enough damage to hit the damage cap, and optionally further ways to increase it. Although a quick side note, if you end up taking Speed Demon, it won't work on an Evan Spear. So you'll probably have to go for crazy slots if you want to actually make full use of it. When you've decided what damage buffs you want to make use of, the next thing you need to think about is survivability versus mobility. High mobility is very good, as previously mentioned, for stuff like layer 2s, since you can clear them fast, giving you substantially more loot. It's also useful for running away from difficult PvE or PvP encounters. Most builds will usually have some form of mobility with a mantra. Survivability is also good for consistent run, as while most layer 2 builds don't have high fortitude, it's a good thing to consider having extra healing or damage reduction in your builds, since it makes your runs or makes hell modes significantly more easier. The main mobility options that you should go for each attunement are as follows. Frostra has Ice Skates, one of the easiest mobility options in the game, and Glacial Arc that can let you get immense height. Iron Sing really only has Metal Ball, that in my opinion is the best mobility mantra in the game, for mantras that just push you forward. Flame Charm has Flame Leap to gain extra height, it's pretty much just a better Strong Leap in my opinion. Thundercall has Spark Swap that lets you teleport easily, and Gale has quite a lot, having Gale Lunge, Wind Passage that can clip you through doors, Wind Step which acts as a double jump and a leap off cliffs, Inhale that gives you a free speed boost if you feint a Gale mantra, and Heavenly Wind that lets you do the fastest mobility option in the game, Wave Dashing, although this is quite hard to do if you're not experienced. All of these mantras and talents are the best mobility options that you can get from each attunement in my opinion. Okay, but what talents can you go for tankiness? There's Brick Wall, which despite having high stat requirements gives you no ragdolls, so it's very good for hell modes. Reinforced Armor is just general pen reduction, which gives you extra health. Reinforced can give you a small burst of healing, and a slight increase to your damage reduction and damage boost. Exoskeleton will give you consistent damage reduction, and can be regenerated by Blood Iron Spirit to my knowledge. To the Finish gives you 10% extra damage reduction if you're below 1/3 of your HP, and Conditioned Runner is pretty much just free healing in Atheron and Chaser fights. While there is other talents that give you small amounts of health, these are the main talents that builds will be using for survivability. You can also use stuff like Flame Wisp if you go Flame Charm to get extra bursts of healing. So I recommend going whatever coincides with your build. For instance, Condition Runner works perfectly with most builds, since you're going 15 fortitude anyways for an Iron Singer. If you're wondering, out of everything I've discussed in this video, these are all the criteria my current best PvE, the Godslayer V2, meets. Let me briefly discuss stat orders and how to train stats. Something a lot of people don't know is you can train your element without a mantra simply by spamming the element training item. It may cost a bit and take quite a bit of time, but it's not a horrible option to do if you don't want to have to reroll mantras later. And whenever you're making a build, you want to always invest in your element pre-shrine, since this will give you a lot more stat points after Shrine of Order. So let's also quickly talk about oaths. There's only a few oaths that I would really recommend for PvE. Blind Seer is good for hell modes pretty much just because of damage reduction from Tranquil Circle and Sightless Beam. Jet Striker is okay for layer 2s, although you do need to invest in a lot of agility. Star Kindred is pretty nice because you can build chain stacks and get nice mobility with it. However, I find that most builds will either go Oathless simply for the extra wildcard slots, or will go Dawnwalker for Blinding Dawn, which is a very good AoE mantra. And this has been the best talents, mantras, and oaths for PvE. Don't forget about the PvE build contest going on in my Discord. I hope you guys have enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out some other PvE content on my channel, and I'll see you next time.